It takes very big shocks to break the status quo. If we have to have a fundamental change in debt initiatives, the ground is ready because the world, the COVID 19 has shown us that no one is safe if not everyone is safe.
The debt context is very different from the past. It is more complex. We have more different creditors. We have countries with more debt and more diverse debt. We need better instruments, and we don't have them. The instruments in place are not fitted to provide not just a fair solution, but an orderly solution and a rapid solution for the countries.
Sovereign debt restructurings are geopolitical negotiations, and they involve disputes of power. What we need is an international system for the resolution of sovereign debt crisis that has the representation not just of a few powerful creditor countries, but of all the countries in the world.
I think the most important lesson from past debt crises is that debt restructurings usually have been too shallow, they have been too late, they have been too little. You always had a transition from no debt relief to a little bit debt relief to a little bit more, and then you had the major debt relief initiative. But in this course, many people died, poverty increased. So you have all these kind of catastrophes and damage that comes from this, let's say, lack of ambition.
Many developing countries are in debt distress or even close to insolvency. And the future does not really look very good. If we don't do something now, the bill will get higher. I think that's the experience from the past.
The issue of sustainable debt in general is probably one of the most biggest challenges we're currently facing, because we are talking about fighting climate change. We're talking about global challenges such as migration, digital transformation. And when certain countries are facing an unsustainable level of debt, we really need to have a new situation, a new mechanism that are going to make them able to tackle all the challenges we need them to tackle.
Roughly half of the low-income countries in the world are either already currently in or at risk of debt distress. That's not only a financial issue, it's not only a problem for the banking systems and the external creditors and the like for many of these countries. But in the end, it's a matter of people, and it's a matter of principle, that when countries have lacked fiscal space, when they're unable to spend on their domestic populaces because of overbearing interest payments, whether those to domestic creditors or whether those to external creditors, that in the end means haircuts.
In the past, most debt relief initiatives had the creditor's interest in mind. So they haven't been very fair and very effective. But when we had HIPIC and we had debt cancellation, an important debt cancellation, what we realized is that many countries use that fiscal space, use that debt cancellation to invest in education, in health, in investments. So debt cancellation actually works in terms of improving people's lives. So any debt relief should include debt cancellation when it's needed in order to improve people's lives.
When countries received relief under this initiative, the debt burden decreased substantially. And in most countries also the growth rate improved.
There are lessons that we can learn from a domestic law perspective and drawing on existing practice that we can use to improve sovereign debt restructuring under domestic law, but there are also initiatives that should be adopted at an international level. And I believe for that purpose, we need to draw on existing practices, learning from the difficulties and challenges posed, for example, by voluntary participation, which is currently the case under the common framework. Here, I think we could draw on principles of insolvency law to solve those challenges.
What we have is a set of incentives that leads to what we call the too little and too late problem, meaning that when a country enters into a situation of debt distress, it takes too long to initiate its resolution, and generally outcomes are deficient. In order to resolve this problem, We need the creation of an international mechanism for sovereign debt restructuring that realigns incentives of creditors and debtors.
The main lesson from past debt crises is that any gains that have been made can very easily be reversed. We also see reversals of gains in access to information and access to the negotiating table. UNCTAD was an observer, hard-fought observer for the Paris Club in the 70s, currently not an observer in the new common framework.
Germany was a frontline state in the Cold War, so the Western powers had a very strong interest in rebuilding a strong Germany and economically thriving Germany. And through the London Debt Accord, Germany got an extremely good deal, got an extremely good haircut. And this was actually one of the prerequisites of the German miracle, the so-called Wirtschaftswunder that helped Germany emerge from the Second World War and from the destruction of the Second World War. Since these days, we've never seen such good deals any longer. Countries mainly in the global south who are suffering from debt problems, they receive debt relief too little, too late.
What needs to happen is a multilateral initiative that provides for a sustainable solution of sovereign debt crisis that will be a win-win for all those involved in such crises, including all types of creditors and debtors.
The general premise that we need to learn from is that tackling debt crises or in an overly limited fashion is self-defeating. It simply causes future debt crises that can evolve that are even more damaging for the countries themselves as well as their societies.
While it is the government who borrows, it is the people of the country who pay back. So when you are designing a program, when you are designing debt relief concessions and reform associated, I think there needs to be consideration on the impact of the people of the countries, because it is ultimately those who suffer.
Debt sustainability analyses need to be based on much more than the narrow economistic view currently in place. They need to incorporate social considerations, environmental considerations. They need to be based on expenditures that are needed in order to achieve sustainable development goals and deal with climate change. One of the main ways that this can be achieved is to make them more independent. There is a huge conflict of interest in how DSAs are currently undertaken, and that can be redressed by including more legitimate players into the assessments.
Solving the debt crisis is one of the key issues we have to address when we want to empower governments to serve their citizens, to provide public goods, and when we want to move forward with sustainable development.
We need more private sector involvement. We need more structure. And we also need, to make it easier for certain countries to ask for help when they need help and not only to come when it's already too late. So I think that's what we need to work on. And I expect Germany to play a crucial role when it comes to bringing the international community together.
There are several proposals out there that can just be taken up. It's nothing to be invented, nothing new to be discussed. There are proposals by debtor countries, such as an automatic loss and damage debt relief mechanism. But on the level of the German government, on the national German level, there is, for instance, the idea to establish a national legislation to improve private sector participation. There are proposals out there. There are experts discussing this. There are other countries also pushing for this. This is something Germany can easily support.